Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another individual song reaction. Today I have my buddy Chris here with me. And I asked him to do this because we are getting together actually to sort of set up and figure out what we're doing, because in a very short while, we are going to be recording our Metallica Reload reaction. And so just know that video will probably come out before this one. But just know, if you're new here because you're a fan of Sevendust, here on my channel, we have been since the beginning of the year going through the Metallica albums, and I have been listening to of them for the very first time. And we are all the way up to Reload, and we are having such a fun time with 90s Metallica. Someone commented to me earlier today, Chris, that they think 90s Metallica is the best peak Metallica.
Oh.
And if you think about that, 1991 was Black Album. So we're talking Black Album, Load, Reload, Garage Inc., and S&M. Those are some albums.
I think that's a bold claim, but I don't think it is without merit for all of the reasons that you've talked about, where it's like there is so much about the way that those songs are written and how like Hetfield's voice fits really nicely into them, and then there's just so much cool groove and everything else that they do. Like if you don't hold them against pre-Black Metallica, it's a solid bunch of songs.
And I was listening to, not to talk about Load or Metallica a whole bunch here at the beginning of the video, but in our Load video, I specifically mentioned that I thought that I was hearing a lot of Sevendust in Metallica, or I mean, it would be the other way around, obviously, because Metallica was there first. But I think the first Sevendust album came out in either 1994 or 1996, their self-titled one. With I'm a Terminator, turn your life on, I'm a Terminator, super heavy, awesome. And then they also had their very famous song that's the title of a bad word. That's also the title of a bad word that's in the first song off of Metallica's Load. So we're full circling it, right?
Perfect.
The circle goes round and round.
Great.
That's a
censorship segue you've got there.
Yes, thanks. But anyway, what I was getting to was that I heard a lot of Sevendust sort of sounding things on Load, and so that kind of got me thinking about Sevendust. I know they have a new album coming out in July, and so before we record our Reload reaction, I asked Chris if he would want to react to the new Sevendust single that was released earlier this year with me, and he said yes. And another reason we're doing this is because I am fed up with being really excited for an album and then listening to it and having it sound like dog crap. I am so over that happening. This year it's happened 4 times to me, and every time it just breaks my heart more. And so if we listen to this Sevendust song and the mix sounds terrible, then I'm not going to even bother reacting to the album. I'll just listen to it on my own time. So
has Sevendust ever sounded bad?
I do think their first album, which again, it's their first album, but I think their first album sounds pretty low quality. I think for the time it was okay, and for a band that a record label was taking a chance on, it sounds yeah. I do think
so. Basically, no.
No, that's not true. I think their last album was very overcompressed.
Oh, okay.
They had been producing their own stuff from about 2006 or 7 or so on, but for their last album, which I think came out 4 years ago, which is called Blood and Stone, I think, that album they got a new producer for, and I was very excited because I was excited for him to shake things up. And what ended up happening was that album is very overcompressed, and I do not care for the sound of it overall. It's not as bad as some of these other things that I've been mentioning. It's not as bad as Scar Symmetry or anything like that. The mix isn't bad. All the frequencies are there. It's just that there's a lot of overcompression, and it just doesn't sound as good as their other albums, in my opinion, that they self-produce. So I don't know if this album is self-produced or not. I just know this is a single. But we've already talked for too long, so let's get into listening to Fence. We're going to be listening to Fence. I know they've released 2 singles at this point. Are you ready, Chris?
I am ready.
I should also say, because I have really crappy gear and we can't react to videos, we're going to just be reacting to the audio. And the audio that we're going to be listening to is a direct rip of the music video, I believe. So there might be some sound effects in here. We'll see. But I just want to point that out. So, okay, ready, Chris?
Yep.
All right. Sevendust, Fence in 3, 2, 1. All right. I have not heard a second of this, by the way. Not a single second of it.
Same. And I barely ever listen to Sevendust. So.
I was going to ask you that. Okay.
Yep.
Huh. I love it when Lejean has harsher vocals. Probably Corey doing background vocals. Can you hear me, Chris? Are we going to get a guitar solo? Okay, Chris, what are your first thoughts there? It's probably your first Sevendust song you've heard in many, many years, right?
Yeah, in a long time, and one of the first I've ever like really actively listened to. Mm-hmm. The bass was like oppressive, like just. I don't want to say it was too much, but it was beef. Mm-hmm. Like it was everything. All of it was so bassy. Yeah, sounded good though. A lot of spread, very wide.
Mm-hmm. That to me sounded the way I remember their last album sounding. So I'm a little bit disappointed, to be honest. I think that, like you said, it's just all lows, and it doesn't have the problem where there was no highs in it. It's just, it's like it just feels like the vocals are sort of like sitting on top of everything else, and I think the vocals sounded really good, and they were not over compressed, but everything else, like I really don't think the kick sounded good at all. I think the kick is the problem that I'm hearing with the mix, and I think that it's just, I don't know, I am disappointed. I gotta be honest. I'm not as disappointed. I'm not so disappointed that I'm wouldn't react to the whole album and everything. I still will plan to do that having heard that, but I am disappointed that it sounds like it sounds like the way their last album sounded. I think I may need to go back and listen to it. I only listened to it the one time when I first got it.
Yeah, when it first started, like if I had it turned up all the way up, my brain would have blown out of my head. But it almost sounded crunchy and distorted, like it was clipping. But then I turned it down a little bit, and I was like, oh no, I think it was just my imagination or something.
Well, and we have your system is all screwed up because the way we're recording and stuff. So, because I didn't hear any specific clipping in there,
and I don't think I heard any actual clipping. I think it was just, I don't know.
No, I agree with you. It
guess
sounds like, you know how you were talking not long ago about how you don't like listening to the radio because the radio just compresses everything too much?
The radio is trash.
Yeah, that's kind of what this sounds like to me. It sounds like someone took and now we have to bear in mind also, like I said, I took we just listened to an MP3 and I checked it was a 320 kilobit MP3, but this is from I think a YouTube video. So like hopefully the album will maybe sound a little bit better. It might be even have been mastered at a different time. This was released I think 2 or 3 months ago.
Yeah, because I remember you have talked in the past about certain singles having different mixes or mastering based on like the release time and stuff.
Yeah, so I'm thinking that I'm hoping, here's hoping. And also Sevendust is one of those bands that if they have a song that's like a single, it could sound totally different than the rest of the album. Like they have absolutely done that before where they would have like 1 or 2 songs that are like their singles. And so those 2 songs sound completely different than everything else on the album. And the rest of the album will just be mixed completely differently. So, you know, if that's the case, I would even be fine. You know, I'm fine if 1 or 2 tracks is not as good, even though they are saying to me that those are the best sounding songs on the album because those are the singles. I'm fine. You know, I think one of the things that I love about the more recent Sevendust is that they're not afraid to use acoustic guitars and all sorts of things in their music. And so this was definitely a more straightforward, more old school sounding Sevendust song. So to you, Chris, that might have even sounded like something that could have been off of, you know, their home album or Seasons, which are their 2 albums that I'm sure you're most familiar with their songs from.
I'm really not familiar with anything by them.
Right,
like,
but
I've always had,
I'm sure like even like when we were in high school, those are the songs that played on the radio from those 2 albums, and Animosity, which is their huge album. So those 3 albums, Home, Animosity, and Seasons are like the 3 albums that most people think of. I think Sevendust got way better after that. But, you know, I like how the song did the very stereotypical Sevendust thing where it started with a little bit of sort of like electronic-y piano synth pad thing, and it went for just like 30 seconds. And then once the song came in, there really weren't any other elements in the song other than guitar, bass, drums, vocals. That's pretty stereotypical for Sevendust. They always make intros and outros for their songs that are these cool sort of electronic things, almost like transitions between songs rather than an intro. And sometimes they can be even over long. Like they can have like a very slow, quiet thing for like a minute, and then the song just kicks in and hits you. But I actually really appreciate that. I like that aspect of it. And so I like that they did that here. You know, it's just once everything kicked in and started, I like that LeJean Witherspoon was doing his sort of like more harsh vocals in the verses. He very rarely ever sings like that anymore. And so that was fun. And I watched an interview with LeJean the other day. Tank the Tech did an hour-long interview, and for most of the interview, they just talked about Nashville. But he did talk about how they released Fence specifically because they've been gone for so long. They wanted to release this song first because it definitely is the most like sort of old-school Sevendust sounding song. So that's why they did it. So I don't know. I liked it. I'm excited, and we'll see what happens with the album.
Yeah, it was fine. I don't have a ton to say about it. It wasn't
fine.
anything that made me think like, oh, I got to go listen to this album for this, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely, like, I think that I could show you Sevendust songs that would make you think that. It's just this one didn't really do that. And I think
I can show you Avenged Sevenfold songs that would make you think that.
You know, I was gonna ask you about Avenged Sevenfold when we get together to do Metallica, because I wanted to sort of discuss other things that we could possibly do even after or leading up to when we're done with Metallica. But I heard an Avenged Sevenfold song on the radio a couple of months ago, and it was like probably the stupidest song I've ever heard in my entire life. It was atrocious, garbage, trash, terrible. Not the way it was mixed, just what it was. I was like, what is this? I heard it they were playing it on the river, and my radio in my car doesn't say what the song is or anything like that, so I had no clue what it was. And it was over, and they said New Avenged Sevenfold, and I almost drove my car off the road. I was like, what in the hell? That was Avenged Sevenfold? Now, I don't know very much Avenged Sevenfold at all. All I know is that they have albums that sound pretty different. And a lot of people like their sort of more poppy album called Hail to the King or whatever, but they are also like a actual real metal band that did music that's unlike that. But I've also heard that their new album that they released this year, like every song is just like bonkers different or something. So
I listened to most of it, I think, and I don't recall having that reaction.
Okay.
But I don't.
The song
I also didn't think it was awesome. So.
I could not believe the song that I heard on the radio. I was like, what is this? I don't know what it was. I'm sure it was one of their singles.
I might have to go see if I can find it.
I'm sure it was just one of their singles, but oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it. So I don't know, but
I think that you would love Nightmare. Nightmare, I think Nightmare is their best album.
Okay.
A lot of people would probably disagree with me, but
okay. Well, maybe we'll react to that sometime on the channel, or
should,
maybe
yeah.
their new one, just because I think that would be a little bit more topical. But we'll see. We'll see. All right. Well, that's all for now. Thank you for joining us for this song reaction, and we'll see you in the next one.